Why did it take so long for damn Trevor Lawrence to come off the board?
Right.
I was like, what are we doing, man? Like, I was watching with somebody that was like, I think they want the spotlight on them for 10 minutes. They want people talking about the Jaguars for 10 minutes.
And it's the first time that any of us, even including people in Jacksonville, have talked about, the Jaguars in forever. So, yeah. And Marty was down at Trevor Lawrence's house. I'm actually working on a story for next week about Trevor Lawrence's hair. And
nice.
So
well, that's definitely
I've done some serious journalism. This is not one of those stories. But Marty was down there, and I was like, "Hey, what's he doing with his hair? Does it smell like Head and Shoulders? What's the deal?" And
Val Sassoon.
Yeah, that's it. Well, he says he's a Pantene guy.
Pantene Pro V. Well, they're going to pay him a lot of money.
He's the
best hair deal of all time.
When we were kids,
Polamalu.
Yeah, when we were kids, remember all the Pantene commercials were all the supermodels. And they had the flowing hair and all. That's exactly what it looks like. But yeah, but again, a good kid. He's smart. He can play. I mean, the performance he had against Alabama in the national championship game out in San Jose is one of the best I've ever seen in person. The second half of that game, anyway. And so, yeah, it's as a college football writer, and I put you in this category because I wrote that story about you before the draft when you were coming out of UVA. I interview guys and I follow guys, and I don't really do recruiting, but I do cover signing day, and then I kind of usher them off to the pros. And so on pro day, I told my wife, I said on the draft day, I'm just like, well, I'll see you guys later. We'll see if they still stay in touch with me or not. But it's fun for me to just kind of sit back and watch. It's also fun for me to see the NFL guys suddenly discover guys.
Right.
Oh man, he's really good. I'm like, hell yeah, I've been telling you that for 3 years.
With Trey Lance, because that was the one we were texting about last night. I mean, everybody was freaking out, and I was laughing my ass off because I feel like most people were screaming at each other last month, calling each other names, and nobody got it right. Like 10% of people got it right.
Yeah.
How many people got it right that you saw? I saw McGee got it right.
Yeah, Todd was it as far as I could tell. But it didn't surprise me because I knew McGee had been up to North Dakota State a couple of times. And, game day when it was been up there, they were just playing, right? I mean, North Dakota State, FCS playoffs are happening. And so that part of it was but I love – my favorite part, though, is watching – there were kind of two camps. And one camp was much larger than the other one. When the first, that was the camp of, who the hell is this guy? And then there was the camp of the people who were offended. Like, we've been trying to tell you about this guy, and why are you? Somebody tweeted out, why is ESPN making such a big deal out of this? I'm like, we're making a big deal out of it because FCS players don't go third. It just doesn't happen. They don't go in the first round. They don't get drafted, and
unless they're Bison.
Yeah, exactly right. And so what they have up there is a machine. I love the fact that FCS has kind of had the spring to themselves on television in football. And I love the fact that, because the world's gotten smaller, these guys get more eyeballs on them.
Is that it? I mean, is that it? Yeah. Because I do feel like we're seeing, well, there's two things that are kind of trend breakers with Trey Lance. Well, three. Number one, which isn't so much of a trend breaker. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. Number two, he's a small school guy, which we discussed. Number three, not a lot of tape.
Yeah.
So I guess, are we starting to push the limit of how much do we really need to see these kids? Because my take on it is, and I don't know quarterbacks like this, but just using my brain, habits. Okay. Like, you have to be careful with your habits, and not all coaches that we just talked about are created equal. And, if you're building habits through your college career, chances are you're going to have to unlearn some of those habits. You talk about throwing motions, you talk about like how you go through your progressions, that sort of thing. A kid who hadn't played as much football, if I know he's the guy, how much do I really need to see? Do I really need to wait for him to play another 20 games and build those bad habits? Do you worry about guys who haven't played a lot?
I worry about it with quarterbacks. That's for me. And this is just based on what I've talked with coaches about, with NFL guys about, whatever, is that you'd almost would rather a quarterback stay for another year because, reps for him, because the quarterback position is such a high risk deal. Even with the rules of today, it's still such a high risk deal. And it's not just physical, it's mental. I've talked to Steven Strasburg about this, about the pitcher. You know, if they pull you up through the minors too fast, and they just want to get you on a major league mound to see how it goes, and they blast you, you know, your first 5 outings, you might not ever recover from that mentally. And so when I've talked to personnel people, what they said is they just assume like a great safety can play a year of college football and come on, we'll see you in the league. But with the quarterback, a lot of times they would almost rather they stay in the incubator for a little bit longer. So
that's interesting. That's interesting because I mean, maybe the reason I look at this is, and by the way, I wanted the Eagles to take Trey Lance if they were going to take a quarterback. I said that a couple months ago.
Yeah.
When they traded back, I said, okay, they're not drafting a quarterback anymore. The kid to me in San Francisco is perfect because, as you said, like there is that chance always of getting shell shocked.
Yep.
I never thought about it that way, that like guys were wanting college quarterbacks to play the 4 years. You know, like guys in the league, it's that big of a deal to them. Probably for the most part because their offense isn't as dialed in as Kyle Shanahan's, and they're not sure what's going to happen. But I really do think an athletic quarterback like that and Trey Lance in a sideline to sideline offense with playmakers who can get out on the edge, and now like on the boot and they're in man, I can pick up 25 yards.
Yeah,
I mean, like that sucks. That sucks to play against, and it's the most QB friendly offense in the draft. So maybe there's something to Kyle saying. He might agree with you, but their offense is the right one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just I'm always curious to watch, and again, I don't cover the NFL on a weekly basis, but I'm always curious to watch how teams approach patience.
Right.
You know, and some teams just are never going to do it, and some coaches are certainly never going to do it, and that's understandable because you're fighting for your job and just trying to stay in the league or whatever. But I'm always curious to see who's willing to take the route of patience and do what you need to do to get a Trey Lance up to speed, as opposed to, are you just going to freak out and throw him out there and hope for the best? So I covered for my debut as a sideline reporter. And this is how you know it was COVID, because they ran out of sideline reporters if they called and asked me to be a sideline reporter. But I worked the BYU Coastal Carolina game, which was one of the best games, if not the best regular season game of the year. It came down to the last play of the game and, you know, interception at the goal line, the whole thing. But ever since I spent, cram studied for 48 hours on BYU, anybody that has a problem with that quarterback did not pay any attention to what he was doing. And there's this built-in bias against BYU because they're BYU and they don't play anybody. And, you know, it wasn't their fault that their schedule got bombed down to 2-3 games and they had to rebuild it. I say this reluctantly, because it's the Jets, but I think they got a great pick. But you know, now I'm curious to see what the Jets do to screw that up, because that's what they do, right?
I like to believe it's over, man, because you know I really am rooting for Joe Douglas up there. I think Robert Saleh, although like, listen, the quarterback thing, you know, he's going to have to delegate, and the offensive stuff he's going to have to delegate, but. You know, I've tried to find reasons to not bite the cheese on Zach Wilson. And for my untrained eye, I hit them. I don't analyze them as much, but I like the kid. It's hard not to like the kid. The thing I don't like about the kid is he looks 16.
Well, and that's just it. And what's crazy is because of, you know, in a normal year, I would have gone to Provo and gone to practice and talked to guys in person, but everything we did was on Zoom. And the night before that Coastal game, you know, he was in his hotel in Myrtle Beach, and I was 5 minutes away, but I interviewed him on Zoom, and same thing. He looked 16. And then in pregame, he walks over, "Hey, Mr. McGee, it's great to chat with you. You know, excited to be here, and can't believe we're playing a game." He's giant.
So he's really actually a tall guy.
Yeah, yeah, and he's got those broad like swimmer shoulders. I mean, he's a big dude and smart. I mean, that's the thing is, you know, Tom Holmoe, who's the AD at BYU, was a coach forever. Say what you want about BYU. They know offensive football and have for 40 years. And so they all, when I saw how excited they were, they've tried to sell me on guys before when I was like, okay, you know the deal, that when they're like, all right, no. But you could see they weren't faking it with him at all. So, yeah. But we'll see. I mean, you know, again, it's the Jets. And I would love all my long-suffering friends in the Northeast who are Jets fans, I would love for this to work out. And also I would love for it to work out because then, you know, it would make me look smart. Fields. So every year there's a guy, right? And again, what I said earlier about the guys I've covered forever. And, Fields was always so high profile. He did that Netflix show his senior year of high school and went to Georgia and transferred to Ohio State and the whole thing. And I kind of had admittedly some an opinion on him without having to really talk to him.
Right.
And then I went to Columbus and I spent the day with him. I think there were maybe 2 weeks into the season. And him talking to me about the transfer to Ohio State and how literally his parents dropped him off and left, and it snowed that night, and he was like, "The hell with this! I'm going back to Georgia."
Right.
And his parents were like, "We're not coming back to get you, so you're staying." And then how his teammates eventually, took him under his wing. Let's go play basketball, whatever. But talking to him about his decision to go there, and talking to his dad about it, they called it a business decision. But he's also, he got his degree. He's worked his ass off. But then to hear the things I've heard about him suddenly over the last 3 weeks, and is he motivated? Is he a team guy? Is he coachable? And I always think back I remember I was on a plane with a now retired NFL personnel guy just happened to be sitting across the aisle in fact, we were coming from a pro day. And we start talking, and we're talking about Deshaun Watson at the time. And he starts throwing the same kind of things at me. Well, but is he coachable? Does he have the right attitude? And I had the exact same conversation with this guy about Dak Prescott. And I told him, I said, you said the same thing about Dak. And I said, you said the same thing about Russell Wilson. And he goes, that's just what those guys all have in common. I go, yeah, that's what they all have in common. And I've kind of felt like that with Justin Fields, which is, because Justin Fields is black, I really think that his haircut and the look on his face and his body language, I got comments from him over the last 3 weeks from NFL people that I didn't get about anyone else. And I'm like, spend an hour with the guy, because if you spend an hour with him, you don't question his motivation. I'm not saying that he's going to be a great NFL quarterback, but I'm saying that if you have ever spent any time with him or watched him at practice, then all of this other stuff, it's the most fascinating and frustrating thing for me. Because
there's the stereotypes, and then there's also, you pile on the fact that a lot of people that work in the NFL are sheep.
Yeah. No, it's a fact.
And listen, a lot of people are sheep. So I'm not saying that the NFL, there's a lot of great, football minds up there picking and profiling quarterbacks and players, but a number of people just repeat information. We do in the media.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful about the information you repeat, and where that information is coming from. And I've learned my lesson on that, not in the same lane, because I know to handle those stereotypes with care. But I've repeated something before that ended up being just kind of hearsay, and I trusted the person that told me. You got to consider the source, man. Yeah. And it's pretty simple. Ask his teammates.
Yeah. No,
you know what I mean? Ask his teammates. Watch him interact with his teammates. That's the biggest. That's the big. Just watch the guy interact. You know what I mean? And I watched him, intermittently. I don't know if he's going to be a good quarterback or not, but nothing about him screamed bad attitude watching him play.
It certainly didn't scream lack of work.
The opposite.
Right. Yeah. That's the stuff I started hearing was lack of work ethic and lack of drive and all that. And I'm like, if you really know his story, then, but it takes, to your point, and I've made these mistakes too, assumptions about people. I did it with him until I went and spent time with him. It took an hour.
Yeah.
For me to realize, and it took me standing on the sideline for half of one practice to go, I was wrong, and so that part of it, the thing gets so intense and so much BS starts flooding these reports. And some of it too is, guys putting bad info out there because they're hoping that.
Yeah, I was wondering if a lot of it came from the Bears.
Yeah, right.